Welcome to Hogwarts. Experience Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry like never before. Explore the castle's exterior, get lost in the Forbidden Forest, and fly around the Quidditch pitch. It's all here waiting for you. Welcome home. A train of thought. Before the Hogwarts Express existed, students used to travel to the school in any manner that caught their fancy. Minister for Magic Italian Gamble, who had an interest in Muggle innovations, eventually suggested a train. A mysterious castle. The narrow path had opened suddenly onto the edge of a great black lake. Perched atop a high mountain on the other side, its windows sparkling in the starry sky, was a vast castle with many turrets and towers. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Hogwarts: A History. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry is one of the most well-respected wizarding schools in the world. Located in the Highlands of Scotland, it accepts students from all over the United Kingdom, as well as Ireland, from the age of 11. Created by 4 founders many years ago, Hogwarts is united by its 4 houses: Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Slytherin and Ravenclaw. Once there, the young wizards are greeted by an enormous castle which towers over sweeping grounds, a huge loch and a large, dense forest, all of which are shielded from Muggle eyes by charms. Indeed, if a Muggle were to pass by Hogwarts, all they would see is a ruin and a warning of danger. Plus their phone wouldn't work. High levels of magic make Muggle devices go haywire, apparently. The Battle of Hogwarts. The enchanted ceiling of the Great Hall was dark and scattered with stars, and below it the 4 longhouse tables were lined with disheveled students, some in traveling cloaks, others in dressing gowns. Here and there shone the pearly white figures of the school ghosts. Every eye, living and dead, was fixed upon Professor McGonagall, who was speaking from the raised platform at the top of the hall. Behind her stood the remaining teachers, including the Palomino Centaur, Firenze, and the members of the Order of the Phoenix who had arrived to fight. Evacuation will be overseen by Mr. Filch and Madam Pumphrey. Prefects, when I give the word, you will organize your house and take your charges, in an orderly fashion, to the evacuation point. Many of the students looked petrified. However, as Harry skirted the walls, scanning the Gryffindor table for Ron and Hermione, Ernie Macmillan stood up at the Hufflepuff table and shouted, "And what if we want to stay and fight?" There was a smattering of applause. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Fred and George's Great Escape. Give her help from us, Peeves. And Peeves, who Harry had never seen take an order from a student before, swept his belt hat from his head and sprang to a salute as Fred and George wheeled about to tumultuous applause from the students below and sped out of the open front doors into the glorious sunset. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Still a pretty great hall. The entrance hall is the room that precedes the Great Hall in Hogwarts, but that's not to say all manner of things didn't happen there, too. In the books, Sybil Trelawney was unceremoniously fired there by Dolores Umbridge, and Fred and George made their dramatic Hogwarts exit in the entrance hall after setting off a whole bunch of fireworks. The Sorting Hat's first song. Oh, you may not think I'm pretty, but don't judge on what you see. I'll eat myself if you can find a smarter hat than me. You can keep your bowlers black, your top hats sleek and tall, for I'm the Hogwarts Sorting Hat and I can cap them all. There's nothing hidden in your head the Sorting Hat can't see, so try me on and I will tell you where you ought to be. You might belong in Gryffindor, where dwell the brave at heart. Their daring, nerve and chivalry set Gryffindors apart. You might belong in Hufflepuff, where they're just and loyal. Those patient Hufflepuffs are true and unafraid of toil. Or yet in wise old Ravenclaw, if you've a ready mind, where those of wit and learning will always find their kind. Or perhaps in Slytherin you'll make your real friends. Those cunning folk use any means to achieve their ends. So put me on. Don't be afraid. And don't get in a flap. You're in safe hands, though I have none, for I'm a thinking cap. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. An indecent proposal. The entrance hall was the location whereon, embarrassingly, randomly asked out Fleur Delacour. I don't know what made me do it, he said at the time. Of course, Fleur would go on to marry his older brother, Bill. Bit weird when you think about it. First impressions. The entrance hall is rather special, as it was the first room Harry entered at Hogwarts. This was also the first time the students were introduced to Professor McGonagall. Unknown to Harry, he had technically met her once before, when he was just a baby being dropped off at Privet Drive. A very strange Christmas dinner. During one awkward Christmas, only a few Hogwarts students, including Harry, remained. This resulted in a very weird Christmas dinner, during which Albus Dumbledore won a stuffed vulture hat from a cracker, much to the chagrin of Severus Snape. Harry's first feast. It was lit by thousands and thousands of candles which were floating in midair over 4 long tables, where the rest of the students were sitting. These tables were laid with glittering golden plates and goblets. At the top of the hall was another long table where the teachers were sitting. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. The Yule Ball. Dress robes will be worn, Professor McGonagall continued, and the ball will start at 8 o'clock on Christmas Day, finishing at midnight, in the Great Hall. Now then, Professor McGonagall stared deliberately around the class. The Yule Ball is of course a chance for us all to, let our hair down, she said, in a disapproving voice. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Food for thought. To enter the Hogwarts kitchens, students must find a painting of a seemingly innocent fruit bowl and tickle a pear. Didn't you know pears were ticklish? Food, glorious food. In all of the Harry Potter books, the Great Hall at Hogwarts is the location where food is mentioned the most. 74 times, in fact. Hogwarts at Halloween. 1,000 live bats fluttered from the walls and ceiling, while 1,000 more swooped over the tables in low black clouds, making the candles in the pumpkin stutter. The feast appeared suddenly on the golden plates, as it had at the start of term banquet. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. The greatest of halls. The Great Hall is an integral room in Hogwarts and has hosted many a spectacular event. These include hundreds of start-of-term feasts and celebrations, from Halloween to Christmas, during which it is always decked out in spectacular decorations under a ceiling enchanted to look like the sky outside. For Harry, the Great Hall was where he experienced many life-changing moments, from winning Gryffindor the House Cup for the first time, to being picked as Hogwarts champion in the Triwizard Tournament. It was also the place where he, Ron and Hermione had many happy breakfasts, and the room in which the school mourned the loss of Cedric Diggory. In the final book, it is also the very room in which Harry finally conquered Lord Voldemort, after 7 long years. Hats a fact. When getting sorted into Hogwarts houses, some students confuse the sorting hat, creating a hat stall. This phenomenon occurs when the hat takes more than 5 minutes to decide on a student's house. Near hat stalls include Hermione Granger nearly a Ravenclaw and Neville Longbottom nearly a Hufflepuff. Minerva McGonagall was a true hat stall, with the hat agonizing over putting her in Gryffindor or Ravenclaw. Hogwarts portraits. Hogwarts portraits can move from picture to picture and interact with the living world. How much they can do this, however, depends on the power of the portrait's subject. The painter would use the sitter's favorite phrases or personality traits and input them into the painting. This is why Sir Cadogan is always challenging people to fights, and the fat lady has a penchant for chocolate liqueurs. When it comes to headmasters and headmistresses' portraits, the subject must visit their portrait and chat to it on regular occasions, to teach it to perfectly reflect themselves after they passed. A Hogwarts romance. Madam Pince, the Hogwarts librarian, was suspected of having had a romantic relationship with the Hogwarts caretaker Argus Filch. We got wind of this in Half-Blood Prince, when Harry told Hermione he thought there was something going on between them. How scandalous. A slippery slope. The stairs to the Gryffindor girls' dormitory will turn into a slide if any boys try to walk up them. According to Hogwarts history, the Hogwarts founders thought boys were less trustworthy than girls. Hoggy Warty Hogwarts. We were introduced to the school song, featuring the iconic lyrics Hoggy Warty Hogwarts, in Harry's first year. It has set lyrics that can be sung to any tune a student or teacher desires. Sadly, after that first year, we never heard it sung again. As J.K. Rowling explained, Dumbledore called for the school song when he was feeling particularly buoyant, but times are becoming ever darker in the wizarding world. The House Ghosts. How did each Hogwarts house ghost die? Well, nearly headless Nick was nearly beheaded, the Fat Friar was executed, the Grey Lady was murdered by the Bloody Baron, and the Bloody Baron killed himself in remorse for what he'd done to the Grey Lady. Lovely stuff. Muggle magic. Muggle technology famously does not agree with Hogwarts. However, Muggle studies students are allowed to use Muggle internet as research for that particular lesson. We imagine this takes place away from the castle, due to Hogwarts' incompatibility with anything electronic. An awkward setting. The greenhouses were the setting of an incredibly awkward scene between Ron and Hermione, as Hermione almost sought to ask Ron out on a date to Slughorn's Christmas party. However, Ron put his foot in it by asking if she was planning on getting off with Cormac McLaggen, and Harry was left to awkwardly squeeze Snugglepuff pods in the background. Ah, young love. The greenhouses. The greenhouses are where Hogwarts students go to study herbology, led by Professor Sprout, the eccentric head of Hufflepuff House. We know there are at least 3 greenhouses, each one holding increasingly more interesting and dangerous-looking plants. They are where Professor Sprout grew mandrakes, plants with powerful restorative properties that cured the students attacked by the basilisk in Chamber of Secrets. Greenhouse 3. There are 3 known greenhouses at Hogwarts, which contain gradually more interesting plants the higher the number. Harry started out in Greenhouse 1, but eventually got to sample the delights of Greenhouse 3, which included pus-filled bubotubers. Hermione's Sanctuary. The only person missing was Hermione, who turned up just in time for the lesson. Been in the library, Harry finished her sentence for her. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. The restricted section. Among the horrible books we know exist in the restricted section of the Hogwarts library are Most Potent Potions and Magic Most Evil. The latter lets out a ghostly wail when you shut it, giving a whole new meaning to the phrase "I couldn't put the book down." A paper paradise. And then, of course, there was the sheer size of the library. Tens of thousands of books, thousands of shelves, hundreds of narrow rows. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. This is a mandrake's world. It's not just the Gryffindors who know how to party. The mandrakes threw quite the bashing Greenhouse 3 when they came of age. According to Professor Sprout, the moment they start trying to move into each other's pods, well no, they're fully mature. Too much information, Professor. Flora to fauna over. There was a murmur of interest. They had only ever worked in Greenhouse 1 before. Greenhouse 3 housed far more interesting and dangerous plants. Professor Sprout took a large key from her belt and unlocked the door. Harry caught a whiff of damp earth and fertilizer, mingling with the heavy perfume of some giant, umbrella-sized flowers dangling from the ceiling. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Many magical plants. Some of the plants that the Hogwarts students study across the Harry Potter books include fanged geraniums, mandrakes, pufferpods, venomous tentacular and snargaluffs. What? No daffodils? Hogwarts at Christmas. One morning in mid-December, Hogwarts woke to find itself covered in several feet of snow. The Weasley twins were punished for bewitching several snowballs so that they followed Quill around, bouncing off the back of his turban. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. A forgotten Horcrux. In Deathly Hallows, Harry returned to Hogwarts to track down the final Horcruxes. Little did he know that he came across one by accident in his 6th year and never realized. An old tiara in the Room of Requirement that was actually the lost diadem of Ravenclaw. A magnificent entrance. The entrance hall was so big you could have fitted the whole of the Dursleys' house in it. The stone walls were lit with flaming torches like the ones at Gringotts. The ceiling was too high to make out, and the magnificent marble staircase facing them led to the upper floors. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Howlers in the Hall. The Great Hall was where Hogwarts students received their morning post, but that post wasn't always welcome. On occasion, the Great Hall provided brilliant acoustics for students to receive howlers, screaming letters that explode if you don't open them. Usually sent from angry parents, victims of howlers in the Great Hall included Neville, for leaving a big bunch of Gryffindor passwords lying around, Ron, for nicking his dad's flying car, and poor Hermione, who was sent nasty hate mail from witch weekly readers who thought she was in an outrageous love triangle with Harry and Victorcrum. She wasn't. And also, she was a random teenager they didn't even know. Bad form, witch weekly readers. Silence in the library. The library is home to a seemingly never-ending treasure trove of knowledge, stacked high with every tome imaginable. It's where you will most likely have found Hermione, who regarded it as a sanctuary of learning. But other students, not so much. Of course, most are more interested in the restricted section, where a number of darker books can be found. For example, one of the first books Harry found, there was one that couldn't stop screaming when he opened it. So much for silence in the library. A short history of house points. Albus Dumbledore gave out the most house points during the course of the Harry Potter books. Severus Snape deducted the most. What a surprise. No smoke without fire. Harry and Hermione were tasked to go to the astronomy tower to transport Norbert, Hagrid's illegal pet dragon, to Charlie Weasley's friends. Unfortunately, they were caught and lost a gargantuan 150 Gryffindor house points for their troubles. Picking Hogwarts students. How are Hogwarts students selected? Via a magical quill and a sentient book, of course. Yes, the Quill of Acceptance and the Book of Admittance have lived in a small, locked tower of Hogwarts ever since the four founders placed them there. Together, the book and the quill detect a child exhibiting their first signs of magic, and decide if they should be placed at Hogwarts. Sometimes they disagree, however. The book was adamant that Neville Longbottom was not a wizard, but was soon proved very, very wrong. A tower with a terrible future. In the books, the Astronomy Tower is one of the 3 highest towers at Hogwarts, along with the Gryffindor Tower and the Ravenclaw Tower. But we don't remember the Astronomy Tower for its lessons or its stargazing so much. This is where Albus Dumbledore died. A grave warning. The dark mark was glittering directly above the Astronomy Tower, the highest of the castle. Did that mean the death had occurred there? Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Fawkes' song. And he knew, without knowing how he knew it, that the Phoenix had gone, had left Hogwarts for good, just as Dumbledore had left the school, had left the world, had left Harry. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Harry's a hoot. The Owlery was the place where Harry had his first proper conversation with his then crush, Cho Chang, in which he didn't embarrass himself once. Hooray! We wonder what else those owls have seen. Vig's home. The Owlery is quite simply the post office at Hogwarts, except instead of grumpy humans standing in line, it's full of owls. Every owl of every kind dwells in the Owlery, and it's where Hogwarts students come to post letters to their nearest and dearest. If you don't have an owl of your own, you can borrow one. This is the place where Harry found solace by sending Hedwig off on many an occasion to deliver a letter to his godfather, Sirius. Oops, Snuffles. A place for owls. The Owlery was a circular stone room, rather cold and draughty, because none of the windows had glass in them. The floor was entirely covered in straw, owl droppings and the regurgitated skeletons of mice and voles. Hundreds upon hundreds of owls of every breed imaginable were nestled here on perches that rose right up to the top of the tower, nearly all of them asleep, though here and there a round amber eye glared at Harry. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. The rules of apparition. As Hermione had to remind Harry and Ron countless times, you cannot apparet or disapparet within the school grounds. Unless, of course, you're a house elf, who have a different sort of magic. Tripe, Spill. Spill Trelawney was only considered for the job as divination teacher due to her great-great-grandmother Cassandra being a celebrated seer. Although Spill had a few lucky breaks every now and then, she never quite matched up to her relatives' prowess. A long climb. There's got to be a short cut, Ron panted, as they climbed their 7th long staircase and emerged on an unfamiliar landing, where there was nothing but a large painting of a bare stretch of grass hanging on the stone wall. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Unfogging the future. Divination, the study of the mysteries of the future, is a class that divides Hogwarts students. Hermione Granger famously hated it, calling the subject woolly. Strong words. To make things worse, you have to climb an awful great height to even get to the classroom, which, according to the books, is situated right at the top of the North Tower at Hogwarts. This is the room where Harry learned of Professor Trelawney's obsession with his death, and even witnessed her make a genuine prediction. Former school subjects. Did you know that J.K. Rowling gave the Hogwarts subjects different names in her early notes? Herbology was called herbalism and transfiguration was called transfiguration/metamorphosis. It was originally intended for divination to be compulsory for first years, as was alchemy and the subject called beasts. We assumed this later turned out to be care of magical creatures. Dumbledore's office. It was a large and beautiful circular room, full of funny little noises. A number of curious silver instruments stood on spindle-legged tables, whirring and emitting little puffs of smoke. The walls were covered with portraits of old headmasters and headmistresses, all of whom were snoozing gently in their frames. There was also an enormous, claw-footed desk, and, sitting on a shelf behind it, a shabby, tattered wizard's hat. The Sorting Hat. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. The Chamber of Secrets. The Chamber of Secrets was furtively built by Salazar Slytherin, who kept it so well protected that nobody found it for many years. In fact, the Hogwarts founders were only supposed to take care of their own houses and choose the location for their dormitories. Salazar clearly went above and beyond this. The secret headquarters, designed to house a horrific beast that killed Muggle-borns, can only be opened by those who can speak Parseltongue. A very great lake. The Great Lake, a large, beautiful stretch of water that surrounds the castle, is crossed by nervous first-year students upon arrival at Hogwarts. Deep underwater, the lake is packed with magical creatures, as Harry discovered when he had to dive in and explore its great mysteries during the second task of the Triwizard Tournament. From vicious Grindellos to stoic Merpeople, the lake is also home to the famous giant squid, who mostly keeps itself to itself. Crash Course. In the original draft of Chamber of Secrets, J.K. Rowling planned on having Ron and Harry crash the flying Fort Anglia into the lake, rather than into the Whomping Willow. Inside the lake. We saw the lake in close detail during the second task of the Triwizard Tournament, J.K. Rowling's favorite task, in fact. There, Harry encountered small fish, mere people, Grindellos and an awful lot of blackweed. A great soaking. It is traditional that Hogwarts first years are transported across the Great Lake to the school by boat, with Hagrid chaperoning them. We're not sure why, perhaps as a dramatic initiation process. After the first year, students are gifted with the much dry route of taking coaches pulled by Thestrals. Here's looking at you, Squid. Although the giant squid has a fearsome reputation, we suspect it might have a compassionate side. When a young Dennis Creevy fell into the lake in his first year, it seemed as though the giant squid pushed him back into the boat. J.K. Rowling refers to the squid as semi-domesticated. A quick dip. "Hare's mad," said Harry, staring at Crum's dark head, as it bobbed out into the middle of the lake. "It must be freezing, it's January." "It's a lot colder where he comes from," said Hermione. "I suppose it feels quite warm to him." "Yeah, but there's still the giant squid," said Ron. He didn't sound anxious, if anything, he sounded hopeful. Hermione noticed his tone of voice, and frowned. "Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire,"